Nupraptor's Retreat is the first major boss dungeon of Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. And like other locations, there are some changes from the retail version in the alpha, although most are relatively minor. As we approach the exterior of the retreat, several changes could be made out in the landscape of the area. The closed southern river from Vassabund goes further in the alpha, but doesn't lead anywhere. The cliff alongside the gate entrance is actually a wall in the alpha, and there are numerous minor changes in the cliffs around the location, notably affecting the shape of the cliff platform just below the skull of the retreat. Another interesting feature of the alpha is that a muddy patch behind the skull is in fact a full trail that can be accessed, but we'll come back to that later. For now, we can enter the gatehouse, which is largely identical to the retail version. Around the side of the lake, we can also enter a cave which leads up to the high platform. The layout here is similar to retail, but the obstacles are different, with numerous boulders, plants, and standing stones blocking the way, potentially requiring the mace to get through. In retail, there are far fewer obstacles, and the cave can be accessed straight away.
My magic extends into very exotic disciplines, such as the manipulation of time. I am able to slow time down so I can move about, quick as a wolf, while all others move as though they were mired in mud, 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 mud.
Moving inside, the interior of the retreat greets the player with a new entrance area, a cave with a mural of Nupraptor's head and a pair of torches, followed by a save altar in the next room. In retail, these are combined into a single room.
Reputed to have been ripped from the chest of the greatest vampire to have ever existed, Janos Audron, the Heart of Darkness restores vampiric unlife. It can be used over and over again, but always consumes magical energy from the one who uses it.
The following sewer section seems to be much the same, although it is missing its vista point, and it has some of the numbered ability cards seen in the level select in retail. These give the appropriate abilities for that time in the game. Interestingly enough, there's a slight reshuffle of location numbers here, with the sections of the Nupraptor mural room and this one swapping places between versions. The next sewer areas are virtually identical to the release version, although there are some minor additional enemies.
You are lost beyond all help. What will become of I see.
The Heart of Darkness.
Moving upstairs, we again have a set of very similar rooms, with only minor changes, such as the amount and position of wall spikes and differing enemies. Again, the following section with the serving girl is virtually the same, except the serving girl is a villager NPC whereas in the retail version, she's a chained prisoner.
Lost all hope. You cannot.
I came upon one of Nupraptor's serving girls, catatonic with fear, choking out half words through bloodied, broken teeth. Although tempted by hunger, I stayed my hand, allowing her to tell her story. She spoke of her lord Nupraptor, driven to insanity by the brutal slaying of his beloved Ariel. She spoke of his self-mutilation, sewing his eyes and lips shut to deny the outside world. Fueled by despair and hopelessness, he turned his magic on the circle, infecting their minds with his madness. Nupraptor cared for nothing now, save his pathetic self-pity. Scars such as hers would never heal. Death would only be a mercy. I came upon one of Nupraptor's serving girls, catatonic with fear, choking out half words through bloodied, broken teeth. Although tempted by hunger, I stayed my hand, allowing her to tell her story. She spoke of her lord Nupraptor, driven to insanity by the brutal slaying of his beloved Ariel. She spoke of his self-mutilation, sewing his eyes and lips shut to deny the outside world. Fueled by despair and hopelessness, he turned his magic on the circle, infecting their minds with his madness. Nupraptor cared for nothing now, save his pathetic self-pity. Scars such as hers would never heal. Death would only be a mercy. The cretin squandered life and left it seeping on the floor. Such waste was a travesty. Perhaps Nupraptor needed to be taught a lesson as to the value of blood.
The next section with the stairway is again virtually the same, but has an extra mural in the retail version. In the alpha, some extra unused room details can be found in the lower left corner of the area. Apart from some switch designs, the brain room is largely the same, except for moved items, as are the rooms that branch from it. With the top left showing no appreciable differences.
At times, my magic extends into very exotic disciplines, such as the manipulation of time. I am able to slow time down so I can move about, quick as a wolf, while all others move as though they were mired in mud. When conjured, the energy bank permits me access to mass amounts of magical energy for a brief period of time. However, when the moment passes, I will be drained of all magic, unable to cast even the simplest of spells.
bottom left having only the switch design changes,
The Heart of Darkness. The Heart of Darkness.
and the top right missing enemies. The bottom right area does have an extra room with a teleporter junction that's used upon the exit of this puzzle branch, but it's largely redundant in the scheme of things, which may be part of the reason for its removal. Funnily enough, the painting switch to access the correct teleporter seems to be set up incorrectly. The door is already open, and using the switch permanently closes it. Using the teleporter beyond takes Kain to the next chamber, a large darkened room with a correct path that lights up as Kain approaches. This is largely the same as Retail, and just as awkward, although there is some small variation in the path taken. When this area is complete, the teleporter takes the player back to the previous teleporter junction, where Kain can take another teleporter to return to the main skull room. In Retail, the first teleporter goes straight to the skull room. Moving on to the next area takes us to the jaw plate of Nupraptor's retreat, which will show up later in Soul Reaver 1, albeit looking a bit different. The area around the jaw is much the same between the alpha and retail version of Blood Omen, although the retail version has more flay artifacts in a side room. There is a notable change with the enemies used, with the area populated by butcher characters. This hints at the character of Lupo the Butcher. Lupo the Butcher, apparently named as a joking reference to the 1980s animated short of the same name, is listed among the players on the NPC Blood Omen scripts. No character by that name actually has any lines in the script, however a generic butcher character is listed as repeating a variant of the son of a bitch catchphrase from the animation. Of course, no such character appeared in the final game, but another reference could be found in the level select, which showed a doorway labelled as Lupo, alongside those for Bazielim and Nupraptor's retreat. Unfortunately, the doorway is broken in the retail version of the game, but its position led to speculation that Lupo could have been the butcher character that ran the chopping block in Bazielim. Ultimately, the alpha version showed this not to be the case. When accessed in this version, the Lupo door is accessible, and warps the player to the jaw plate section of the retreat, where several butchers aggressively attack the player. They're replaced by fire mages in the retail, and no character speaks any of the associated lines. But this seems to be where Lupo was to appear.
You are lost beyond all hope. You cannot see my feet, for you have so shut your eyes. What will become of love? I see only damnation.
These curious devices hurl bolts of whirling energy and eviscerate my human enemies by stripping ragged flesh from blood-stained bone.
Moving on to the next area, and the circular room behind is identical to retail, as are the passages below which lead to the face of the retreat, although it is worth noting that both eyes show the regular Nosgoth without the comment or corrupted view highlighted in the retail version.
From the depths of the retreat's eye sockets, I viewed Nosgoth in a different fashion. The glass seemed to warp the image and taint the color, as if Nosgoth needed assistance in making its corruption apparent. Should this object strike an enemy, rot and decay would instantly eat their flesh and leave only a pool of blood and tissue. For a time after, the toxins are still active, and therefore lethal to the touch.
Progressing on through the teleporter leads us to a domed area, presumably near the top of the retreat. Again, this room is similar in terms of layout to the retail. However, the Alpha has one interesting party piece over its retail counterpart. The room has several vistas, showing a number of picturesque views across Nosgoth, highlighting locations such as Vorador's Mansion, Avernus, Malik's Bastion, the Pillars, and Dark Eden. Some using views that are not seen in the retail game. Instead of these vistas, the retail game gets a number of power-ups. The teleporter leads to the final save point of the area, and another change, with the Alpha bearing a second teleporter to progress onward, where retail replaces it with a simple door.
So, Malik, have you come to fail the circle once more? Leave, Paladin. I do not need your protection. Come, Kain. Come, share my pain.
The Nupraptor boss preamble takes place in a much grander room in the Alpha, with the painting and checkerboard floor and red walls seen in the other areas of the retreat. In retail, this is changed to a much more drab room, with brick walls and stone floors, although the wall paintings and statues remain. Nupraptor's battle takes place in a room that's largely identical to retail, save for a few minor differences in the position of spikes and platforms. The room has some interesting lighting effects as the battle progresses, and there are some variations in the directions that the skulls are shot. But other than that, the battle is much the same.
Perhaps the head of her beloved will convince Ariel that I have accomplished my task.
After his defeat, the player must retrieve the Nupraptor's head card from where the head rolls to, whereas in retail it's recovered from Nupraptor's corpse, despite the same rolling head animation playing.
Perhaps the head of her beloved will convince Ariel that I have accomplished my task.
As Kain exits the room, the mace is laid across his path to the teleporter, rather than in the next room. After Kain uses the teleporter, he emerges in a room in a cave with several standing stones blocking his path, requiring the use of the mace to progress. and a mural of Nupraptor's head on the floor. In retail, the mace is found here. The floor mural is of the mace, the standing stones are in a much wider arrangement, and there are a pair of mace chests in the room. After exiting this room, the retail version of the game triggers bat flight and returns the player to the Pillars of Nosgoth. But the alpha does not. Instead, the player is free to walk out of their own accord, and they emerge on a high plateau behind the retreat, which is inaccessible in retail. From here, Kain can follow the trail along as it goes behind the corner of the Bazielim map and eventually rejoins the main trail northward at the Blood Fountain Cave along the way to Korhagen. Join us next time as we explore Korhagen and discover a pair of new spells in Force Shield and Magic Absorb.